What happens when a royal prince's carefully curated public persona unravels, live on national television? What begins as a standard late-night promo turns into a full-blown meltdown, years of buried resentment, entitlement, and contradiction boiling over in front of a stunned studio audience. Tonight, we're breaking down one of the most shocking, uncomfortable, and revealing celebrity interviews ever captured on camera. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think pushed Prince Harry to the edge. The energy inside Late Night with Seth Meyers was business as usual. Camera crews adjusted their framing. The house band riffed through its final rehearsal. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Backstage, Seth Meyers reviewed his notes for what was supposed to be a light, friendly segment. Just a routine sit-down promoting Prince Harry's latest charitable venture. But what no one expected was a front-row seat to a royal unraveling. Seth took the stage, delivered his monologue with smooth precision, then introduced his guest with genuine warmth. Prince Harry walked out, smiling. Wearing his usual relaxed blazer, he waved, Seth's hand, and took his seat. Confident, composed, ready. The first several minutes went exactly as scripted. Seth asked about California life, philanthropic goals, and mental health work. Harry responded with polished charm, offering just enough vulnerability to feel relatable, but never too much to lose that curated mystique. The crowd was loving it. Laughs, nods, applause. But then, Seth shifted gears. "You know, Harry," he began casually, "I've followed your work on media responsibility. You've been really vocal about the harm caused by sensationalist journalism." Harry nodded eager. "Absolutely. Seth, the media needs to remember they're dealing with people, not just stories. It's about truth and decency." Seth leaned in slightly. "Right. And you've been especially critical about how your family, particularly your wife, has been treated. Lawsuits, interviews, your book. You've made your position clear." Harry's smile tightened, barely noticeable, but it was there. Then Seth dropped the question that changed everything. "So I guess what I'm curious about is, how do you reconcile that stance with your own choice to reveal deeply personal, private family moments in your book? Conversations, arguments, things some might say weren't really yours to share." The studio air thinned. You could feel it. Harry's jaw clenched. His fingers shifted against the armrests. The warmth in his smile faded into something harder, colder. "I'm sorry," he said, still calm but clip. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" Seth didn't blink. "Well, in spare, you recounted private exchanges with your father, your brother, your stepmother, family disputes, phone calls, intimate moments behind closed doors. I'm just asking how you square that with your criticism of the media's intrusion into your family's life." The transformation in Harry was immediate and impossible to ignore. The mask slipped, the charm cracked, and what followed was a raw, defensive exchange that left the audience stunned and the internet on fire. This wasn't just another royal interview. This was the moment Prince Harry lost control of the narrative. On air, sharing his truth until the cracks showed. "Those were my experiences, Seth," Harry said sharply, his smile now barely holding. "I have every right to tell my own story. There's a difference between sharing your truth and having lies printed about you by tabloid journalists." "Of course," Seth replied smoothly, not missing a beat. "No one's questioning your right to speak. I'm just pointing out what seems like a contradiction." He leaned forward slightly. "You've taken legal action against media outlets for publishing private information about your family. But then, you've shared private details about those same family members. The difference is, they can't exactly sue you back, can they?" The studio grew noticeably quieter. This was no longer the cozy PR puff piece everyone expected. The audience could feel it. Something real was happening, something raw. And Prince Harry's composure was starting to slip. "I think you're mischaracterizing this entirely," Harry snapped. "What I shared in my book, provided necessary context. Context for my journey and the challenges I faced growing up in that environment. It wasn't gossip or cheap sensationalism. Necessary for whom? Seth asked, his tone still respectful but unwavering. Was it necessary for you or for them? Did your father, your brother, your stepmother? Did any of them consent to having their most personal moments broadcast to millions of readers? And that's when Harry made his first real mistake. Instead of brushing it off or redirecting, he let the irritation show. You know what, Seth? I think you're being deliberately obtuse. Harry snapped. Anyone who's actually read the book knows I was just trying to explain my side, my healing process. Your healing process, Seth repeated, almost to himself. Then he looked Harry dead in the eye. And if that healing process involved exposing your family's private struggles, their vulnerabilities, then I guess that was just collateral damage. Harry's face flushed red. His voice rose. That's not what I said. That's not what happened. You're twisting my words. I'm not twisting anything, Seth said calmly. I'm just asking, how do you justify condemning the media for doing the very thing you've done? Just with a different platform. Silence. Deafening silence. Harry stared at Seth, breathing harder now, his chest rising and falling in slow, angry waves. Even the camera operators seemed unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. The audience was frozen. This wasn't just awkward, it was historic. When Harry finally spoke, his voice was low and tight with restrained fury. I think you fundamentally misunderstand what I went through, and what my family put me through. The two situations aren't remotely comparable. Seth raised an eyebrow, his tone quiet but direct. What your family put you through? Can you elaborate on that? Harry's eyes flashed. The prince leaned forward, posture abandoned, voice thick with rage. What my family put me through? Are you seriously asking me to justify my trauma? On your little comedy show, Seth stayed remarkably calm. I'm not asking you to justify anything, he said gently. I'm asking you to help people understand how sharing their private lives in a best-selling memoir is different from the very thing you've accused the press of doing. Because it's my story, Harry shouted, the echo of his voice ringing through the stunned studio. My pain, my truth. I lived it. I have every right to tell the world what happened to me. But not what happened to them, right? Seth countered, voice steady. Not your father's private battles. Not your brother's most personal confessions. Not your stepmother's vulnerabilities. Those aren't your stories to tell. Harry laughed, but it wasn't warm. It was hollow. Bitter. You have no idea what you're talking about, he snapped. You sit here in your comfortable studio, cracking jokes for a living, while I grew up in a gilded cage, trapped by protocol, surrounded by emotional neglect. He was unraveling now. My father was more worried about his image than his son. My brother, jealous of any attention I got. And Camilla. Harry's voice turned to ice. She was playing palace politics long before she had any right to. The studio was still, tense. Even the audience looked uncomfortable now. The charming, articulate prince was gone, replaced by a man whose pain had been weaponized, live on air. This was no longer a promotional tour. This was Prince Harry, unfiltered, cornered, and combusting. They thought they knew what to expect from Prince Harry. Poised, polished, sympathetic. What they got instead was something far more raw, a man unraveling in real time, his entitlement and bitterness laid bare for all to see. Seth Meyers raised an eyebrow, voice steady but firm. So, because you felt neglected, that gives you the right to expose your family's private moments to the world. To risk damaging their relationships and reputations? Harry's voice spiked to a near shout. Damage their reputations. What about mine? What about the years of smear campaigns? The lies. Watching my wife dragged by the same press machine that killed my mother. Seth's tone sharpened just slightly. I'm not dismissing your pain, Harry. But you're not a child. You made choices. You chose to leave royal life. You chose to move to California. You chose to sign multi-million-dollar media deals. You chose to publish a tell-all memoir. That was your call. Harry's face reddened. His voice rose with incredulous fury. Choices. You think I had choices? I was driven out. They made it impossible to stay. They refused to protect my wife from racist attacks. They leaked stories to deflect from their own messes. We were scapegoats. Seth tilted his head slightly, repeating the word. Scapegoats. And yet, by that logic, aren't you now using your family as scapegoats for your decisions? Blaming them for the path you chose? The question landed like a gut punch. Harry visibly recoiled, opening his mouth as if to speak, then closing it again, struggling for a response. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, shaking with fury. How dare you? How dare you sit there and psychoanalyze me when you know nothing about what I endured? Nothing about the pressure, the suffocating expectations, the lack of support when I needed it most. Seth leaned back, calm but cautious, recognizing a man on the verge. I'm not psychoanalyzing you, Harry. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your own words, your own actions, instead of blaming everyone else for the consequences of your choices. Harry's voice cracked with rage. I've taken more responsibility than anyone in my family ever has. I've been honest about my flaws, my pain, my healing. While they hide behind palace walls and cold, sanitized statements, I've laid myself bare. Your truth, Seth interjected, gently but pointedly. What about their truth? What about their right to privacy? Their right to tell their stories. That was the breaking point. Harry shoved back his chair, the screech of it against the floor slicing through the tense silence. Several audience members audibly gasped. This is ridiculous, he snapped. I came here to talk about charity, not get ambushed by some late-night comedian who thinks he understands royal life. Still seated, Seth remained composed. This isn't an ambush. I'm asking real questions about real contradictions in your public statements. Isn't that what good journalism does? Harry's laugh was bitter. Journalism. This is gotcha theater. This is exactly the kind of manipulative media trap I've spent years warning people about. Seth didn't flinch. So when journalists ask tough questions, it's manipulation. But when you expose your family's private pain without their consent, that's noble truth, telling. You don't see the double standard. Harry's fists clenched. There is no double standard. Everything I shared was necessary for people to understand the toxicity I was born into. This was about healing, about breaking cycles. Who's healing? Seth asked, his voice cool. Because from here, it looks like your healing came at the expense of their dignity. And now you're profiting from it, while suing anyone else who dares to write about you. Harry's voice was trembling now. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be put on trial. I came in good faith, and instead I get this, a circus, a character assassination. Seth finally stood, meeting him eye to eye. This isn't a trial. This is accountability. You made public statements. You profit from your public persona. And now you're being asked to explain it. Isn't that what you chose when you became a media personality instead of a working royal? The hit landed. Hard. Harry's expression twisted. Rage, confusion, panic. The persona he'd worn so confidently in interviews past was crumbling before the world's eyes. Media personality. Harry sputtered. I never wanted this. I was forced into this by a family that fed me to the wolves, and a monarchy stuck in the past. Seth's skepticism showed now. Forced. You signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify. You wrote a best-selling memoir. You've done a global interview tour. Nobody forced you to monetize your family. Harry's breathing was uneven, his voice fraying. You don't understand anything. You sit in your perfect studio, making jokes about people's real trauma. You have no idea what it's like to have your life picked apart by strangers. Seth let the moment breathe, then quietly said, But that's exactly what you've done to your own family. You picked them apart, for strangers. The silence in the studio was suffocating. Harry stood frozen, mouth open, caught in the collision between who he claimed to be and what he had done. His face shifted rapidly. Rage, disbelief, wounded pride. Then, in a voice low and bitter, he said, "You think you're so clever, sitting there with your smug little questions, trying to tear down someone who's actually trying to do good in the world. This is the exact kind of toxicity I refuse to tolerate anymore." Seth's reply was gentle but lethal. "Harry, I'm not tearing you down. I'm asking you to explain your own words. If those questions feel like attacks, maybe it says more about you than it does about me." That was the breaking point. Harry's public image shattered. "You know what? I'm done. Absolutely done. You promised a respectful conversation about my causes, and instead you tried to make me look like a hypocrite." "I didn't make you look like anything," Seth replied evenly. "I just asked questions. If the answers make you uncomfortable, maybe that's worth thinking about." Harry laughed, harsh, bitter. "Uncomfortable. I've always been uncomfortable. I grew up hating my skin, my life, my role. The difference now is I refuse to pretend things are okay when they're not." Seth watched him, then offered a final observation. "You're not refusing to pretend, Harry. You're just pretending something else. That your family's private pain is yours to share. That your choices weren't your own." And with that, the studio went silent. History had been made, one implosion at a time. Harry's hands trembled, his voice cracking as it rose. "I'm not pretending anything. Seth, everything I've shared, every single word, has been in service of truth and healing. I've owned my flaws more honestly than anyone in my family ever has." Seth didn't flinch. "Honest about your flaws," he said thoughtfully, "but not about your motivations. You've made millions by revealing family secrets, but you package it as nobility. You've built a brand around being the victim, and attack anyone who questions that narrative." Harry's voice splintered with fury. "You think this is about building a brand? I wanted a quiet life with my wife and kids. That was made impossible by the same toxic institution you're now defending." Seth shook his head. "I'm not defending anything. I'm pointing out a contradiction. You demand privacy, yet publish intimate family details. You claim victimhood, yet you've silenced the very people you accuse. People who can't fight back." Harry glared at him, chest rising fast. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed, what I've endured, and I don't owe you an explanation for how I choose to heal." "You're right," Seth said calmly. "But you did choose to give interviews. You wrote a memoir. You signed deals to explain yourself. You can't chase the spotlight and then complain when it shows things you'd rather keep hidden." That hit a nerve. Harry's response was venomous. "The only thing being revealed here is your lack of empathy. You're attacking someone who's trying to break generational cycles, defending a system that protects abusers and silences victims." Seth's tone hardened. "Who's really being silenced, Harry? You've had books, documentaries, podcasts, entire global platforms to tell your side. The people you accuse, they've stayed largely silent. So ask yourself, who's actually voiceless here?" The Harry's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time, he had no comeback. His face contorted with disbelief. "This is unbelievable," he finally snapped. "I expected a civilized conversation, not an ambush. You walked into this interview having already decided I was guilty." Seth's patience thinned. "Harry, you've spent 20 minutes accusing your family of emotional neglect, racism, and political manipulation. But the moment I ask you to explain inconsistencies, I'm the problem." Harry was red with anger, sweat dotting his forehead. "You're twisting everything I say. This is the manipulative behavior that made my life hell to begin with." "I'm quoting your own words back to you," Seth replied evenly. "If hearing your own words makes you uncomfortable, maybe the problem isn't the questions." That's when it snapped. Harry stepped towards Seth. his posture aggressive, voice shaking. You know what? I don't have to sit here and listen to this character assassination. I don't have to justify my life to you or anyone else. Security edged forward. The room had gone deathly still. Seth remained seated, calm as ever. No one's forcing you to stay, Harry. But walking away from real questions doesn't make them disappear. It just makes you look like someone who can't defend his own story. Harry's response was a verbal dagger. I don't need to defend myself to a nobody. You're just a comedian playing journalist. You think asking gotcha questions makes you a truth teller. Seth didn't blink. Real accountability, he said quietly. Is that what you call it? When you publish private family moments for profit. When you make accusations, then act shocked when someone asks you to explain them. Harry was unraveling. Those people had decades to treat me with basic decency. They didn't. They chose the crown over their own family. They made their bed. Now they can lie in it. Seth's next question was a whisper, but it hit like a sledgehammer. And your children, what kind of relationship are you building between them and their grandfather? Their uncle. When you publicly attack those people. Harry froze. For a second, just a second. Uncertainty flickered across his face. Then the rage returned, deeper than before. Don't you dare bring my children into this, he snarled. Don't you dare question my parenting. I'm not questioning your parenting, Seth said quietly. I'm questioning your judgment. Harry stared at him, his whole body trembling now. Then in a voice like ice, he said, We're done. This interview is over. He yanked off his mic with shaking hands. This is exactly why I don't do these anymore. Because I've learned. People like you pretend to be respectful, then go straight for the ambush. Seth remained seated, unfazed. I didn't stab you in the back, Harry. I asked questions about your public words. If you can't handle scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be making public claims. Harry turned one last time, his face twisted in rage. You think you've won something here. All you've done is prove the media is exactly as toxic as I've always said it was. He hurled his mic onto the chair and stormed off set. Seth watched him go, then turned back to the camera. Well, he said dryly, we'll be right back after this commercial break. The studio remained frozen in stunned silence. What the audience had just witnessed wasn't a bad interview. It was a full-blown implosion, a public figure's carefully constructed image dismantled by nothing more than calm, direct questions. So what really triggered Prince Harry's meltdown? Was it Seth's pointed challenges? His refusal to accept the victim narrative at face value? Or was it something deeper? Something Harry's own words could no longer hide? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns of the most jaw-dropping celebrity moments caught on camera.